Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Upper Deck. I'm Lynn with PinstripeChronicles, and my partner, Chris Northrop, is taking a time with family this weekend that's much needed. And joining me is Bobby Tats from at PinstripeChronicles, and our special guests today are Chris and Patrick from Talking Rivals podcast. So let's just get right to it, guys. T-minus 12 hours until the deadline. We're not hearing good news from yesterday's meetings. I saw articles from Andy Martino and Evan Drelich and Jeff Passan, all basically saying the same thing. And it's very clear that we're finally seeing significant movement on the players' part, but the owners aren't having it. So, let's just put it all on the table and think where we are and where we'll be with 12 hours left.
We really haven't seen anything at all. We've heard little whispers of stuff, but the only thing we saw out of yesterday's meetings was Ron Manfred got a lot of cardio in, running back and forth between the, the owners and the players. So we know he's in good health, and but his mental health can't be good right now with all the stress going on. The game is pretty much in his hands, and he has not handled it very well at all. Like you said, we got 12 hours until the deadline before it starts to affect the regular season, and it seems inevitable that opening day is now a question mark of when it will be and if it will be, and that's a problem.
Yep, absolutely. Chris, Patrick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Patrick.
I was always cautiously optimistic, but they're throwing around little numbers and moving up 1 million or the minimum salary. They're moving up a couple thousand here and there, and I'm on neither side. I just want baseball. I just want them to figure it out. I think there's too much money to be had. I think they should just try to meet in the middle and figure it out. And I thought what they should have done from day one is meet every day. And at this time, they should just slide their best offer on a piece of paper to the middle of the table. And then if they're way different, just get a mediator in there.
Yeah, I'm all for that too. I thought when they turned down the mediator earlier, I thought that was wrong. I bring someone in there, even not just to end it, but at least to try to get them closer. Get that mediator in there, but get a mediator that they both agree to, not that just the league wants to bring in, or not just the one that the players want to bring in. Bring in somebody that's that they both agree on, that could be as down the middle as possible, and just to try to at least get them closer, because right now, I mean, some of the issues, they're not even close. Like we said it earlier, they agreed on the DH, that's great, but that was probably agreed upon a couple of years ago. So nothing new there, but a lot of these other things like CBT and arbitration and all this stuff, they're like not even close. So, like Patrick said, I love that idea. You know what? Here's your best offer. Here's your best offer. All right, we're not even close to each other. So let's bring in a mediator to try to bring us closer. Because if you bring a mediator in, it doesn't mean what that mediator says is going to be the final decision anyway. They just say, okay, let's, they just try to bring you closer together. And it doesn't hurt to bring them in, because if you don't agree with them, okay, we're back to square one. We're back to where we were. So it doesn't hurt to bring one in, but it's not pretty. But today, I think John Heyman said that they're a lot closer than people realize, and it could be done tonight or tomorrow night, which I don't know how that's possible, but hey, I hope so.
I hope he's right.
Yeah.
I think we all hope he's right. But it seems like MLB has been frustrated that the players aren't moving on anything. And from what we've been hearing, that seems to have been the case. Yet yesterday, one example of a major drop was, you spoke about arbitration, Chris. They went from 75% of players right down to 35%. That was a huge, gimme back. And MLB in turn just like basically said, nope, we're staying at 22. And I know in the big picture of things, that's just one of the, issues that stalemated. But my question about arbitration, about bringing in a mediator is with 12 hours left for deadline, do the rules allow for them to go past deadline, either with a mediator or agreeing to another meeting tomorrow if the deadline passes?
Well, I think that the whole issue with the deadline was more the owners trying to strong arm the players to get to sign their deal, saying, if you don't make a deal by this date on the 28th, we're just, we're not going to listen anymore. But we all know that they're going to keep listening, because the longer this goes, it starts to affect games and ticket sales and merchandise, and think about all the employees of all these ballparks. So the owners are not going to want to hurt their bottom line if it goes past these 12 hours. It's just these 12 hours affect when opening day would be. That's their deadline. It's not a deadline where if it's not reached by this date, we'll see you next year.
Yeah,
Right.
if they see light at the end of the tunnel, if they're getting closer and they're talking more and things are productive today, I think they would obviously stay and try to figure something out last minute, even past the deadline.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if they bring in a mediator, it'll be after this week, after the deadline passes, because even if you bring in a mediator this morning, I don't think they're going to be able to come up with anything within the one meeting. I think bringing in a mediator should have been done, like a month ago. So at least, stop some getting close to even this deadline. So I think a mediator, if it is brought in, I think it'll be brought in like much, like after the so-called, deadline that they put
And
down.
I was thinking this morning, isn't it ironic that modern baseball with the analytics is fueled by numbers, and now the death of modern baseball is that they can't come together on numbers?
That's a brilliant point.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's ironic.
And the sad
sad.
part too, and the sad part to even add to that is that, they're talking about the numbers, like you said, and all this, and the financial, and the real issue with baseball is on the field, right? They have so many changes that they have to make, and they will make eventually, but it's not going to be this year, right? They've already taken that off the table. Any changes to the game, on the field, pace of play and all that stuff. So that's not even going to come into play probably until another year at least. So I think that's the more frustrating part, because that's the part you got to fix, because if you keep going down the road that we're going down with the way that the game is played, you're not going to be able to sustain the attendance and all that, because people are going to, like, the younger audience is just not going to get into baseball like we did.
That's right. And you're seeing a lot on the feeds, and rightly so, that they're killing baseball. Both sides at this point. And, especially on the tails of the pandemic and, the past 2 seasons where baseball was entirely different in one way or another. And now this, to have either no season or a shortened season or something in between, that's also going to further, the risk of losing and growing the game with the new fans. And, I saw you guys post on your Talking Rivals page that, the OGs and the hardcore and even, some of the somewhere in between fans are going to continue to watch, whatever and happens, and play, watch games if they happen. But not necessarily so with the other ways that they support the clubs. And, truth be told, the younger generation coming in, when it comes to other sporting options, basketball continues to grow, and let's face also that it's a fast moving game. And, baseball has always been sort of clumped with tennis and golf, right? That, it's a slow moving game, with a little bit of excitement here and there. And we know that we're in an age of fast moving everything. We fast forward through commercials. Everything is, you want an immediate effect. And I think that's something that's also that they need to be mindful of. And I also think there's a big misconception out there among Yankee fans on Twitter that why are the players sticking in so deep when they're, it's of no consequence to them where the money really lands. And, they're all millionaires, and that's just not so. People need to remember that the Players Association at the table represent everybody.
Yeah.
They represent the new contract guys, who are not necessarily even meeting $1 million at first. And so that's what unions do. They represent everybody. So I think a little bit of context there is needed. And yet on the other side, in terms of who cares more about the fans and the game, it's really still, in my view, want to know what you guys think. That responsibility is I think acknowledged by players. In fact, there was a post by Sosa from the Marlins this morning that basically says, we love you, we need you, this will get done. And talking about how he walked into a restaurant and somebody recognized him and how excited that person was, and saying that it excited him too. I think that there's more players than not that feel that way. Whereas the owners, they're the gajillionaires, every last one of them. And some of them bought their clubs as a hobby, as a folly, some for a business investment, but they could walk away anytime they want. It's just another thing in their portfolio. So who has more to blame here that the fans should really, levy one way or another?
I think the initial blame goes to Manfred. He's the one that initiated, and the owners. They're the ones that implemented the lockout. Baseball could have been in motion while negotiating, but the owners are the ones that work with Manfred to shut it down while negotiations are going on. So the first set of blame definitely goes to them, and some blame does have to go to the players, even though they're fighting for their livelihoods. It's when you get the rare players that are coming out saying, it's cost of living. I think that was one of Blake Snell's comments, if I'm getting the player in the story right. When he was talking about, making them, having to make a living and stuff like, regular people don't want to hear that. So that started to get people to turn on the players now, where it used to. Now the fans, like we indicated earlier, we're on our own side. We don't care what the deal is, just get the game moving.
Right. 100%.
If I had to pick a side, I would be on the player side. I think, like you said, Lynn, the owners, some of these owners, it's just another stock in their portfolio, having a team. And, I think that there's plenty of blame to go around between Manfred and Tony Clark, and there's no urgency. But, I go back to the people at the table need to respect the product that they're working for. They need to respect the game. They don't need to. I see a lot of things with Manfred. It's kind of obvious that Manfred is not in love with the game that's being put out there. He wants to change it. He wants to tinker with it, and that's fine. Some amount of change is good, like Chris was saying earlier. Right. But I think you have to respect the game, respect the product, and a level of respect would be to come in good faith and talk and be willing to move a little bit, like you said, Lynn, with the players kind of moving on certain percentages. Now it's time for the owners to move on certain.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree too. If I'm taking a side, I'm taking our side. I'm taking the fan side on this. I'm not taking a billionaire I know not all baseball players are making, the 30 million, 40 million that Mad Max and Garrett Cole are making. But there's not many of those guys, right? For the most part, they're all making, minimum salary or just above. But remember, minimum salary right now, before they raise it, is what, $500,000 a year? So
Right.
I don't want to hear them crying or complaining about, I don't want to hear it. Just get it done. I don't want to hear complaining from either side about, oh, this is going to hurt us or we're going to. No, I don't care. Just get back on the field, get it done. All that stuff should be in the, in their conference rooms. You deal with it, because if I always compare it, right? It's a bad comparison, but when we look at big companies out there now, like Target or Amazon, stuff like that, they're making billions of dollars, right? And their owners are making ridiculous amounts of money. And they're still paying their regular workers minimum wage, right? $12, $15 an hour, whatever it is. So look where those players are complaining about. Oh, we're only making $500,000 a year on our minimum salary. Like, that's a joke. We don't care. Just get it done. So I'm not taking an owner's side. I'm not taking the player's side. Good luck to both sides. I hope they just figure it out and just give us our game back. That's all we want. Because what they're doing, to me, and Patrick said it about respect for the game. I call it love for the game, love and respect for the game. I don't see that on either side of that we're talking about. Like, I don't see that from the owners. I don't see that from the players as much as we used to, back in the day. I mean, those guys respected the game and loved the game. They wouldn't put the game through this, and these guys are, like you said, Manfred, he doesn't love the game. Remember a couple of years ago with the Astros about the trophy, calling it a piece of tin? Like,
Yes.
how can you even say that?
Yeah.
So to me, those guys, the guys that are running the game and the guys that are playing the game, to me, they don't respect or love the game as much as the fans or previous owners or previous players.
That's right. And an organization and its employees that don't care about their consumers is at peril. And I know that there will always be fans that will open up their wallets and empty them out for everything, because they're that much of a fan of the sport. But also hearing lots and lots from fans for all different teams that, what, why bother? Sit at home on my big screen TV and just enjoy the game from there. They're not getting my money. And I've been one of them. So, but there doesn't seem to be any respect for the fans, so add to no respect for the game to no respect for the fans. And, that's something that really sticks in my craw and makes me almost as mad as how these negotiations are going.
No, and the easiest way to combat that is the fans need to get together and just say, you know what, we're not renewing our the MLB app. We're not renewing our subscription. You get emails, from ticket sales for your team. Don't purchase tickets. Don't invest any money into 2022 until they have a deal done. Then get your subscription. So that's, the fans really want to respond and make a statement that we've had enough. That's how you do it. And that's pretty much the bottom line of it. You hit them in their bottom line, they're going to wake up and saying, all right, we're losing people. Now we're not only losing the fans, but we're also losing their money.
Right. So let's get back to the brass tacks of the actual negotiations. There's really hasn't been any word about the small market teams and the actual, substantial potential weight they can level here in the negotiations. So is there something I'm missing? Anything that you guys know about about, a group of eight smaller market teams banding together based on how this has been going, and try to move things along as that unit.
Well, you know what? When you look at the teams, right, there's more small market teams than there are the larger markets. So they have
Right.
the majority, the majority of the voice there in these meetings, whether it's Colorado, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Baltimore, all these teams that have like $40 million payrolls, $50 million payrolls, they're the ones with the bigger voice with the owners, right? Like Steve Cohen with the Mets, like he doesn't care. He's like, you know what? I'm going to spend my money regardless. But that's where I think where it's not, where it's not even or not level, a level game here is that you got the big market teams that can spend all they want. And these small market teams just can't do it. They can't spend $200 million on payroll. They just can't do it. Like Kansas City just can't do it. They don't have, the revenue that these other large market teams have. So it just stinks, but that's Major League Baseball. That's why Major League Baseball is so different than, say, football. Football, they share all their TV contract is shared by the whole league, right? Baseball, you have individual TV contracts. So obviously the New York TV contracts are going to be much bigger, right, than say the Kansas City or Pittsburgh. So,
Right.
And I don't think as a New York team or Boston team for that matter, or LA, they're not going to say, okay, let's share all our TV contracts, to even things out. They'll never do that because it's just ridiculously how different the amount is. So until they do something like that, they're always going to be, the big market teams, and then you're going to have all the small market teams. And how do you even that out? I don't think there's a way.
That's what you're seeing now with Cashman, and especially with the shared revenue situation. It was supposed to be to funnel funds to the smaller market teams so they could better invest in their team.
Right.
But when you see year after year, teams like, the Pirates are the prime example. They're the golden, they created, this problem where as soon as they're, they see a player that's really, getting a lot of attention, they're trading them off. They're not investing them into the team to drive up their revenue.
Right.
And Cashman, as much as it frustrates us as fans, when you look at it through the business model of it, why am I going to share my revenue with a team that's just the owner's just putting it in his pocket and not on the field? So
Right.
You know what? I'm not spending anymore. I'm not giving you my money. So I'm just going to keep. I'm going to keep my payroll low now, so you get less. So
And the players hate that.
the owners really have to balance each other out, and I think they're the ones that need to negotiate, not the players and the owners.
Right.
Yeah. And I think an interesting test case once we get baseball back is Cleveland's franchise. They're kind of in the middle, but as far as spending, I think right now, if opening day was tomorrow, their 26-man roster would be less than Max Scherzer this year, money wise. That's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And for a franchise that's had a proud history and is in a middle market, I would say they should be spending more than, I think, 30 something million right now. It's just not sustainable. And I think the small market teams have some leverage here, the way baseball has been going, as far as what Bobby and Chris have been saying. But until they become unified, until they come together as a coalition and kind of wield whatever power they have, I don't think things are going to change. I think teams are going to manipulate the money, and instead of funneling it back into their team, if you're not forcing them to, I don't think they will.
Here's a way, like I know the owners won't do this, but here's a way. If you're going to have the CBT tax and all that, and the revenue sharing, and why don't they have a floor? Because the floor would help out, not a lot, but it would help out a little bit. Just how about $75 million as a floor, right? If you only do $75 million right now, as we speak, Kansas City is at $72 million. So from Kansas City, Oakland, 71, Minnesota, 71, Seattle, 71, Arizona, 66, Miami, 55, Pirates, 34, Baltimore, 29, and Cleveland at 29. So think
29.
about it.
Okay, I was overselling them.
Right.
Wow.
But that's as we speak. Obviously, there's more moves to be made. But
That's astonishing.
right now, that's just 75 million. That is like a drop in a bucket for the big market teams. But if you put the floor at, say, just 75 million, I think that's too low. But let's say 75 million. Think about all the extra money that's going to be put into salary. So if I'm the owners, at least that would be my way of saying, all right, if we need the taxes on top, we have to, because otherwise, the Mets, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers are just going to spend $350 million every year, and there's not going to be any fines. So we got to kind of cap it somehow, not cap it, but there's got to be some kind of fines. But below, there's got to be, if they're going to do that, that's why if I'm the owners, the players, I would push like, listen, at least give us 75 million on the bottom, so this way these teams like Cleveland can't go 30. How do you go at $30 million for payroll when minimum wage, right, is what, 550 or 600,000, whatever it is now? That's a joke. It's for Cleveland. Cleveland's not exactly in the middle of nowhere. Cleveland's a pretty big city. May not be New York, but
with a strong fan base.
I was going to say they got a solid fan base.
Solid fan base.
And I think Jose Ramirez makes like 8 million of that money.
So what's that percentage of 30
the
million?
rest is minimum wage and pre-arbitration.
Yeah.
And hence unions, being in place. The disparity is really disturbing there.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, Chris and Patrick, you and on your podcast, talk about Major League at large. And I've been framing all of this from a Yankee fan perspective. So pulling it out for everyone at the table and their fans. Is it consistent here in terms of what they're hearing about their teams and how the fans are reacting? Is there solidarity across fan bases on this?
I think so.
I think it's pretty universal. Yeah. Most fan bases that I've seen are not as vocal maybe as Yankee and Red Sox Twitter, but you still get the people that are, look, I'm not giving you my money until there's a product on the field, and just figure it out and get baseball back. And the manipulation of contracts and arbitration time, and if there's not a rule set in stone, we'll find a way to go around it. It's all out the window. It's fans don't want to hear that. Fans just want the game back. And I think that's one case where every time on my timeline I see a player posting something, they get 10 times the likes of somebody that posts something about baseball that's a writer, or that's, quote unquote, for the owners or for the GM side of it. So I think the solidarity is with the players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, I think we don't, like we said earlier, we don't want to hear all the financial stuff, because we know no matter what, they both sound like crybabies. They're crying over, like, especially during this time with everything going on in the world, pandemic, the war, the everything, people are we're rubbing two nickels together to survive here, living check by check, and they're complaining about having a $500,000 or $600,000 minimum salary. So from our side, from fan side, we don't want to hear either side. But yeah, we're going to side with the players, with the union. That's obvious. I'm not going to side with owners on this that make billions of dollars. But either way, it's like, just get it done. Like, I think at this point, most fans are just like we're done. We're done with both sides. Get it done, or we're going to be done. A lot of the fans maybe that are, like the diehard fans like myself, Patrick, all of us here, we're still going to watch, maybe.
Yeah, baseball's, the hook is in. Baseball's already got me. It's
right.
Sadly, I wish I could say they don't have my money, but they do.
I just can't quit you.
Right. I may not spend as much money on you, but I may not go out there and buy 3 or 4 jerseys this year or something, but I'm not going to buy any jerseys because that's our only voice, right?
Yeah.
Going to games, spending money on merchandise, ordering the MLB package, stuff like that. That's our voice. So if the fans really want to do something, don't go to games. Don't show up.
That's right.
Or if you're going to show up, put a sign up that says, that voice your opinion, but just don't go to games. That's the only way. If they look out, if the Yankees start averaging, instead of 35,000 fans, if they're averaging 20,000 fans, that's gonna affect them. They're gonna be like, wow, you know what? We really messed this up.
Yep. And Chris and I have spoken often on this podcast about, you know what? We want to see live games. We're supporting our minor league teams.
Yep.
For me, I'm going to spend an hour on the Deegan no matter what, getting to a Yankee game. I'd rather take that 1 hour drive up to Taconic, see some good scenery, and support the Hudson Valley Renegades at this point.
Or just spend 30 seconds to download the MILB app, and like Chris showed me a link, and I think it's $10 for the season.
Yeah.
Compared to Major League Baseball is what, 100 now?
Yeah.
Right. That's a good tip. I'm gonna follow up on that. But I'll go buy their chicken buckets. I'll buy, their hat at their souvenir shop. And just fill that, help fill their stadiums, and making it clear on Twitter that that's what I'm doing. So, I just think, so let me ask this, and we could just take it from there. It's 12:01 tomorrow morning. What are your predictions? Signed CBA, extended talks, mediator brought in, whatever you think.
I think we're going to get crickets. Yeah, I don't see it getting done in 12 hours, but they couldn't do in 2 months. I think that the deal is, like if John Heyman's saying the deal is close to getting done, he's, I'm hoping that he's right and that the deal is really close. But in 12 hours, I just don't see where all the bickerings were going back and forth. That in 12 hours we're going to be like, oh, okay, you know what? Let's just come together, shake hands, and get this thing moving. I just don't see it happening. But it might take another week. I don't think it's going to go another month, but not by 12:01.
I'll have a drink of what Heyman's drinking, and I'll say, yeah, there's going to be an agreement.
You'll have what he's having?
Yeah, I'll take some of his goofy juice and the optimism. But I think there's too much money to be had. I think the adults in the room, if there are any, will stand up and say, look, we can't have another shortened season.
Yeah, I agree too. They got to come to, their senses and say, we can't cancel games, like regular season games. We just can't do it, because that's when the fans will start saying, you know what, if you're going to cancel games, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm not watching this year. I'm not going to any games. So I think eventually they got to come to their senses. Will it happen tomorrow morning? I don't know. I still think they're going to delay it. But I think at some point this week, we got to get something. I mean, I've been saying that for the past couple of weeks, but I think this week I'm gonna buy a little bit what Heyman's saying, but I'm not gonna buy that much, because I know they're far apart in the major.
Like, we're gonna order the drink, but we're not taking a sip yet.
Exactly. Just order it. Like, put it down. I'm not gonna drink it.
Yeah, I'll even slam down a 20 for an extra drink,
right.
in case I want it. But I'll happily let my ice melt, before taking a drink. So that opens up another question then. Let's say they both pull up their big boy panties on this, whether it's tomorrow or at midnight tonight, and the pumpkin turns back into a carriage. Shortened season or full season, and at the cost of spring training.
Not full season.
Yeah, I think their goal has always been I think Manfred wants to shorten the season to 154, to go back to that. And I think this is a perfect segue to maybe do that, lose the first week of the regular season, but I would err on the side of closer to 162 than less.
Yeah, I'm hoping 162, but I think if they don't get it done this, this weekend, which I don't see it happening, but maybe we'll see 1 week missed, the like Patrick said, maybe 155, 154 around there. But if it's anything less than that, that's going to take a huge toll, man. Baseball's going to feel it if they start canceling games, especially with everything going on. Like that's what I think, a good part of this country needs. We need that outlet, right now. All we're seeing is bad news, bad news, bad news on TV. We need something, just like when the pandemic first started. Remember when baseball, they were arguing about when to start the season and, and all that kind of stuff. And it was just frustrating because we were so desperate for something. Give us something to watch on TV, other than like Tiger King when that was so big when the pandemic first started. But
And Yankees classics.
yes, and yeah, right. It's eventually it's like, all right, we've seen this enough. Okay, I want to see new Yankee classics. I don't want to see the old ones.
Right.
So hopefully that they take all that into account and say, all right, guys, listen, let's figure this out. Meet in the middle somewhere, whatever it is, get this done. So hopefully it's not many games missed. That's all I'm praying for.
Right. Okay. So let's go around the room real fast for any final thoughts or a different topic to bring up that's relevant from this week of interest to our fans out there.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting that I saw on Twitter was the suggestion of having the runner-up for Rookie of the Year, and they would get a year off of their arbitration. I thought that was interesting, and it's definitely a talking point that needs, a lot more, needs to be looked into a lot further for discussion down the road, because the arbitration just goes on for too long. You look at the list of all the free agents that are getting into free agency for the first time, and they're pretty much in their 30s now. And it's unjust that they have to wait so long when teams are trying to stay younger. So by the time that they're actually able to get their money, unless the teams buy out their arbitration, then nobody wants them at 30 because they have a 21-year-old in the works that can, that's just as durable, and can give them more years, and they can save money by not having to pay the salary. So that's something that really, I think that has been and should be the focal point going forward for the future of baseball.
And so knowing, or at least my take has always been that at least, based on what I'm getting from fans on Twitter, is the selection of Rookie of the Year as well as MVP hasn't always been so clear in the standards of how they're selected. And so would that play into what you're hearing and saying, Tats? Wouldn't the standards for that, whether it be straight up statistics or not, wouldn't that have to be normed in a way, in addition to the arbitration stuff you're talking about?
I think it's somewhat similar, but it also runs parallel at the same time, where it can cross over, because especially like with Rookie of the Year, it's those are the players that really just grab the attention of the game.
Right.
It's not always about the numbers. It's also the impact, which is why when as much as Yankee fans all wanted Miguel Andujar to get Rookie of the Year, but when you look at when he lost it to Ohtani, look at the impact he had on the game and new fans that he brought in himself. That merited him getting that award, whether we like it or not. That's just the reality of it. So an MVP also has the same caliber. So, Mike, a lot of people say, it should be Mike Trout every year. He's the best player. He puts up great numbers, when he's healthy. He's the best player in the game. But you also have players that really are just standouts, and that those are the ones that really, when you have somebody in Kansas City that knows the players in the West Coast, or if you're a Yankee fan and you're watching, a Seattle game because of a player that they have, that player needs to be recognized around the sport and needs to be celebrated that they had that ability to transcend outside their own local fan base.
Fair enough. Patrick, Chris?
Yeah, I'm looking at, I read something in The Athletic where Manfred, I guess there was, with the sticky tack and the spider tack, whatever it was, the proposed change, I guess it takes up to a year if you want to propose a change from it to be from idea to implementation. And he wants it to go down to 45 days. And I don't know the process of that itself, but what I'm looking at is that a segue for Manfred to get different rule changes in this year, partway through the year? So that should be interesting, on the field changes.
Which I'd be for if they're what we want to see.
Yeah,
But
if they're the ones that I like, then I'm for it. So,
but in general, he scares me with anything like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I think for me, the one thing I'm looking forward to is obviously the end of the lockout. But once it ends, there's going to be, all these free agents are going to want to sign quickly. So it's going to be crazy that first week, I think, because players want to know, where am I playing? Where am I moving to? If I got to move my family now to whatever. So I think that's obviously, but the bigger, I think for me, the elephant in the room literally is going to be Aaron Judge. What are the Yankees' plans on him? Are they going to just sign him to the extension, give him, 7 years, $210 million or whatever it's going to be? Or are they going to trade him this offseason? Or are they going to wait during the season? There's so many options, but to me, the best option is whatever you decide on, it should be done this offseason, because once you get into the season, then you start gambling on if he's going to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, and if he's asking, if the price is way too high, if he wants an 8-year deal, whatever, yeah, you're probably not going to do that. So you're going to trade him at the trade deadline, or, so you're risking the injury there. Or do you want to sign him next offseason? If you try to sign him next offseason, he's a free agent. So there's going to be all these other suitors that are going to try to sign him. So there's so many mini stories going on here with Judge. We don't know what he wants. Obviously he's going to say, yeah, I want to stay with New York my whole career. I want to retire a Yankee and all that stuff. He's obviously going to say that. The team is going to say that too. So it's going to be interesting because I think the decision on Judge is going to decide on what they do with other free agents as well. Because if you sign him, you're talking another, $30 million plus a year contract added on to the, Cole, Stanton's making 20 something million. You got DJ making a bunch of money too. And obviously, so it's really going to be interesting what they do with Judge. I've been saying that for a while, but I think what they do with him is going to be felt for years to come on how this roster is going to be made.
Right. Yep. And I agree. And that's also a very emotional thing to bring up, Chris, for fans, right? So yeah.
He's a great player. I would love to keep him, but what if he stands, and stands pat and says, I want 8 years, $35 million a year. I think that's, and he's entering his age 30 season or age 29 season. So what do you do? It's a tough call, for
right. Right.
What do you think, Bobby? Because you're the big Yankee fan too. So what's your thoughts on that?
No, well, we actually, we talked about it with Donald and Rob during the week on the Judge contract and the rumors going around it, and we think that they're just gonna. I think he's gonna get the blank check. They're gonna want to hold on to him for his career, because when I say blank, they're not gonna pay. They're not gonna pay him more than Trout. Blank check, be realistic about it.
I got you.
I don't think they'll go over 35 a year. But I think he'll get that, the 7-8 year deal with that, because they're going to make the money back in merchandising, ticket sales. He's too marketable a player to let walk away.
Right.
And I think that the Steinbrenners are going to feel the pressure of Cohen in town, and they're gonna pay the extra to make sure that he doesn't go into the other borough. So that was another factor that we had brought up that made a lot of sense. I think that what they're going to do is you're going to have a situation where you're going to pay him more upfront in the first part of the contract. It's almost like a 2-tier contract. Mm-hmm. So the first 6 years he'll make 35 million a year, and then the next few years it'll drop into the 30s, but with milestone incentive. So I think that would entice Judge to want to stay, and it might not hold up their payroll as his contract goes deeper in. Instead of paying 35 million a year at the age of 40, he'll be making 29, 30. You know what I mean? So it's not going to be
deal? Huh? You think it's going to be like a 10-year deal?
He's going to want to stay. If he's going to stay for his career, it's going to be a 10-year deal.
Wow.
That's my gut instinct.
I would prefer
retiring at 39 or 40.
I think they would.
Wow. I don't know.
Okay, well, I better not hear crying at age 37 like we heard for Gardy.
Yep.
And what about Gardy? What about A-Rod making 25 million as a
look? Boston is still feeling it for trading Mookie Betts, so it takes a while to recoup as far as the players you get back. And
yeah,
I still see a lot of Mookie Betts fans jerseys in the stands when I go to games, or when I watch them on TV. So if Judge, you would see a lot of 99 jerseys still out there if Judge got traded, and that would take a while so I think he gets signed, but I don't know about 10 years, but I think he gets signed by the Yankees.
Yep. I think what I'm very interested in seeing when we get back to the actual season is what the infield will end up looking like and what the pitching rotation will end up looking like. The infield really is the one I think most at I'm not going to say peril and be dramatic that way, but is the most open-ended and potentially domino effect taking place. I think everyone is solid on Glaber not being at shortstop, but then what happens to him?
No chance in hell he's playing short this year,
right? And they claimed at the end of the season that he'll be the second baseman this season. But can we even trust that? And I know a lot of this is contingent on who we may or may not get. Personally, I think take the eggs out of the basket on Freddie Freeman. I don't know why we're even still discussing him. I color me more than surprised if he doesn't stay with Atlanta. And that's all going to feed into the feeding frenzy that we know will happen. But to me, second base and short base are the most critical play-by-play on the infield. So Glaber's name being in that equation for either of them concerns me. So then what's happening to Gio? What's happening to LeMahieu? What's happening to Rizzo if they keep him? So I think that it's uncomfortably open-ended what the infield will bring, and knowing that it's been weak for WEAK, particularly last season. So that's my worry / thing I'm most interested about.
I agree, because all right, let's assume Glaber, if he's not traded, he's going to be our second baseman. I think that's pretty much done. The problem is shortstop, right? We definitely need a shortstop. And there's two big names still out there, right? Trevor Story and Carlos Correa. So right. I just don't see us signing Correa, right? Because he wants the long-term contract, and we got Volpe coming up. And listen, we've been getting Volpe shoved in our face now for the last couple of months as being, I don't want to say the next Jeter, but the next great Yankee, the next great shortstop, all this. And that's great. That's awesome. And I hope he does. But I don't think they were going to do that and then sign a guy like Correa to play shortstop long term, and then we're going to move Volpe to second, or we're going to move Volpe to third, whatever. So that's why I think it's the stopgap, as we keep hearing about, whoever it might end up being. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but that's my opinion. And then first base is another one. Like you said, maybe that's going to be DJ's position, or do they make a trade for, Greg Olson is the name we keep hearing about too. I would love to have Greg Olson, because that's a guy we've had, right? Think about it, going back to Don Mattingly. We've had that big power left-handed first baseman who has also a great glove. I mean, Giambi, not a great glove, but he was okay at first. But I'm talking about big power bat, left-handed swing, all that stuff. We've had that going all the way back to Donnie Baseball. So
That's right.
to bring in Olson, that would be great. It would cost us, obviously, 2 or 3 top prospects, so that would hurt. Not Volpe or Dominguez, obviously, but and then third base, Gio. Is Gio going to bounce back? Is he going to bounce back from last season offensively? The glove is always going to be there with him, so the glove is going to be there. It's
we did see it turn around at the end of the season.
A little bit, yeah,
a little bit. We were starting to see it before we lost.
Yeah, no, it's same thing with Torres. Once Glaber moved over to second base, he was hitting better, and it seemed like once he got away from short, that was a bad experiment at shortstop. That was a bad move,
right?
In every sense of the word. So
right,
that's how I don't know, but we never know. Like you said, they might sign Freeman. I don't think that's a good move, because he's going to be 32 this year. You want to sign a 32-year-old to a 6-year deal? I don't know. I hope he just goes back to Atlanta, figure it out, go back there, and
but that also goes back to the problem with the amount of years in arbitration that I brought up. Right. Here it is. Freeman's reached free agency for the first time, and here it is. He's finally able to get a contract for all he's accomplished and his ability, but you're too old now. Nobody wants to play you in their 30s.
Well, he signed an extension early in his career, right, or something like that.
He might have bought out a couple. I don't.
Yeah, usually you hit free agency around 27 to 29, but still, to Bobby's point, it's too late in the career. They got to do something with arbitration.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, one of the ideas I had is once you're put on the 40-man, your clock starts, or once you reach a certain level, your clock has to. They can't start the clock at 25. That's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the development of the game. Especially when you go through the NBA and the NFL draft, even the hockey draft. These players are coming up almost immediately. You're not waiting 5-6 years to see them, get on a major league field. So that's something that baseball really. That's another thing that they need to put focus on too.
Right. So I think that this is a great place to end, because we're talking about possibilities and also talking about as if baseball starts. So I think let's just end there for on the positive assumptions that we're basing all of those on. So thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at PinstripeChronicles. I want to thank our guests again from Talking Rivals podcast, which is also a podcast worth following. Kristen and Patrick are, as I'm sure you saw, very knowledgeable about not just the Yankees and the Red Sox, but baseball at large. So hit a follow for our friends Chris and Patrick. And to you, please continue watching, and remember that you'll always have a special reserved seat with us on the upper deck. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for having us, Lynn.